Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Welcome to today's episode of Indie Beacon Radio. I am B Alan Bourgeois, and I have with me Lindsey Backen, who has written 3 books, but she has another one coming out. Welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you.
So let's start with the basics. What got you into wanting to write?
My mother, actually. I had dabbled in writing, but I had terrible handwriting and terrible grammar and terrible spelling. But I was always telling her about stories that I had and in my head, and she said, "Why don't you write it down?" And I was about 12, and so I went to the computer and I pecked out 1 page of 18 font story and printed it out, and I was like, it looks like a real book. And then I was hooked.
Cool. And did you continue to write from that point on, creating books, or did you happen to wait until later?
No, I kept going. When I was in high school, I took the Children's Institute of Children's Literature course. I picked it up at a Walmart, I think, and actually my dad did, and then just kept writing until I was in college and I started studying theater, so I did a little bit of playwriting as well.
Cool.
I published my first book when I was 23.
And what was the first book?
The first book was called The Secret of Centaura. It's
Okay.
I have since revised it and I'm going to release it next year. It's the beginning of a 7-book series.
Okay, so tell us about it.
The Secret of Centaura is about a boy who is born in a fictional kingdom. It doesn't have magic. It's based off of if they had gone from Ireland to a little remote island, and he is supposedly a legend that they've all been waiting for to rise up and rise a kingdom out of ashes. But his uncle is the king of the current place, and so he has to kind of have a double life, training to be king of the secret kingdom while navigating the day-to-day life of the other.
Being a lesser known person and the other, quiet, reserved, behaved.
Yeah, really the scapegoat.
Okay. So as becoming a king for the other hidden place, what does the character go through? What trials and tribulations does he have to go through to become that person?
Well, for one thing, the king is physically abusive with him. So he's got some psychological hang-ups with that. But mostly there's a lot of pressure because he's just got the double life. He can't tell his father even about the secret kingdom, and he can't tell his cousins. So he's got these friendships over here that he has to grapple. But I actually have 2 books coming out before that one, so I hadn't really thought about my answers.
Okay. So out of curiosity, since this is one of a series, I assume through the series then we find out how he deals with everything and ultimately he does become the king. Is that correct?
In his own way, yes.
Okay. So a lot of authors write from what they know. Is this something you have experience with as far as that character, or you know people in that situation?
A little bit. It's vaguely based off of, I grew up in a very conservative group, and there was a lot of pressure to look one way and to fit into one mold that I just didn't really feel like I fit into. I wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to be an author, and I wanted to go out and do all these things. So some of it I based off of the trying to be who you are on the inside with all the pressures of this community surrounding you.
I fully understand that. So after Swing, what is the next book that came out?
Swing was Across the Distance. Across the Distance I set in my family home, the one I'm actually in now. It's belonged to our family since 1902. And at that point, my grandparents had passed away and we thought we might have to lose it. So I chose it for the setting of this new story. And the new story is about two girls who meet through a music box. It's a time travel story. So one girl is modern day and one is 1912. And through the music box, they're able to step into each other's worlds. And they find out that something happens to one of the girl's family members in 1912, but they can't figure out exactly who it is or what it is. And so it's a bit of a coming of age story and a bit of a mystery.
So there's two items with that one I'm curious about. One is the confusion that they both may have, one going from the past to the future and the future going to the past.
Exactly.
Do you address all that?
Yes, there is a bit of a slant on that one where the modern girl is very, not too feministic, but very modern. And, you know, she has kind of a turbulent relationship with her father. She doesn't want to get married because she's seen the way that he treats women, and she's a little bit hostile. And then you have Clara, who's the girl from the past, and her father is ultra protective. So she's got a world to the other extreme where a lot of times she's not even allowed to leave their house. And through meeting each other, they kind of exchange viewpoints, and one becomes a little bit softer and one becomes a little bit braver.
So in writing this story, was it a tribute to your grandparents and their family home, or was that just the setting?
Mostly it was just the setting. It was actually an idea that a friend and I came up with one night. We wanted to film a story, and we were going to go visit the house. And so we were throwing across these ideas, and she was like, well, what if, you know, what if there's a modern girl? And so she was going to be the modern girl and I was going to be the older girl. And then we never got around to filming it. But a couple of years later, I reapproached her and I said, hey, you know, can I turn this into a novel? And she said, of course. So I did.
Did you offer for her to do the screenplay?
No, I should though. I don't think she's really interested.
Well, if you saw it as a movie, you might want to write that screenplay and get it out there, and you never know what will happen. So
yeah.
You had mentioned that something happened to the past female in 1912, or to her family, or to the storyline. Let me rephrase that. Do we find out in this particular book what actually did happen, or do we have to wait for another book?
This book is a standalone. It could potentially have a sequel in the future, but it's pretty complete in itself. So okay. I will not.
And the music box, was that obviously it was the special magical item that brought them both together, but how did you find or work with something? What inspired the music box?
It was a music box that my grandmother gave to me. It was a glass music box, and at one point the music box is destroyed, and I liked that concept of kind of the delicate situation, and it's the frequencies in the music that brings the girls back and forth to each other. So they both have to be playing the music box at the same time, and whoever plays it first is the one that pulls the other girl into her world.
So, okay, so since they do go back and forth constantly, and please stop me if I'm giving too much away, I assume then they agree ahead of time when to play it so one can go one way or the other. Is that right?
They try, but a lot of times it's just somebody picks it up and the other one can hear it. And so she'll run over and twist it in her time.
Interesting that they can hear it cross times, and you're talking almost 100 years at least, so it's an interesting aspect.
Yeah. If one winds it, then the other one can see her, but she has to touch it in order for the first one to see her. So the first time, Scarlett is the modern girl. The first time she hears the music box, she actually thinks it's a ghost, and she gets all freaked out because the other girl can't see her or respond to her. But eventually they start passing letters back and forth, and then one day they just accidentally kind of hit it at the same time.
Interesting. So. And what, I mean, okay, so you have the family house, you have the music box, those are great inspirational items, but was there something else that, other than the fact that you and your friend had, talked about the concept, was there anything else that inspired this particular line of thought?
A little bit, like for the grandfather, in the story, I based it very, very loosely off of my second great-grandfather who built the house. So there were different portions that I pulled in and I completely fictionalized and wove into the story. And I also used locations in the town that really exist. And one of them was a pavilion that was here in 1912, and it's been rebuilt, but it's still here. So it was really neat coming back here. When I drafted the story, I didn't actually live here. And then later I moved here. And so then I was getting ready to publish, and I talked to the local people and kind of put in a little bit of the history of the town.
Cool. What genre have you listed this under?
I'm sorry?
What genre?
It's under young adult.
Young adult's great. Okay. It sounded like it could also be historical fiction with some of that in there and stuff, but
yes.
That's just a little bit. We have just about a minute left of this section. You mentioned that it could be another story, a sequel to it. Has an idea been roaming around in your head?
Oh, yes. There's two versions of an idea, and I'm not sure which way that I will go with it. Or
could it possibly be two separate books as part of the series that are weeding themselves through?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, if you're like any of the rest of us authors, we have those ideas and people and characters talking in our head all the time, so you never know where it's going to go. So.
Well, and I actually decided originally to take out the time travel portion, so I completely rewrote it with just the 1912 couple. And I had so many friends that had read the first that protested that I decided not to, so I released the original version.
Great. Good. Well, it's time for us to step away and let our sponsors do their thing, and we'll be right back.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? I'm Charlotte Kenyon, award-winning author of the book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. That was a question I had to ask myself some 16 years ago, and you'll have to ask the same question. I had a father-in-law with dementia, a mother with Alzheimer's, and a dad with Parkinson, all at the same time.
What would you do if you found out everyone on the town council were thieves and murderers? That's what happened in Bandera, Texas in 1873. John Cruder was the marshal, yet he needed to operate outside the law in order to balance the scales of justice. He is the Midnight Marauder. You can find his books on Amazon.com and TopWesterns.com in paperback, digital, and audio. I'm Roy Clinton, and I hope you'll read The Midnight Marauder.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
And welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois. You are watching or listening to Indie Beacon Radio, and we appreciate you being here. We have with us Lindsey Backen. I almost said it wrong. And we've been talking about two of her books. She has a third one. So let's dive right into that third book. What is it about?
The third book that's coming out?
The one that you have out.
Okay. The third book is actually a journal for writers. So one of the ways that I approach my fiction is it's very character driven, and I used a lot of techniques that I learned in college when I was studying acting to create the characters. So I've kind of recreated that in a journal form where you have a portion to keep all the characters straight, and you go through their motivations and their goals, and even small things like the way that they move or the way they respond. And then there's another section for locations. There's another section for your storyline and to keep track of your word count. And I did that because I write by hand. Ironically, when I was younger, my handwriting was terrible, and now I love drafting in an actual journal. So I write by hand, and I wanted something physical in front of me instead of trying to keep all the notes on Scrivener or on the computer.
Cool. I'm very much the same. Like you, I actually started writing when I was 12, but I was writing screenplays. But I had a bit, was told to put it away and stuff. But I also handwrite my stories by hand first. So my hands get a little tired after 20 hours of writing and stuff.
I have the opposite. I developed hand problems when I was in college, and typing hurts after a while, but I can handwrite for hours and be fine. So, but it takes me almost, all day to write what I could have typed in about 2 hours.
So let me ask you this, as you're writing, for me, I feel that it's a lot more fluid and the ideas can jump out at any point. So is it more creative for you to handwrite it out?
I think so. I think in handwriting, because it takes you longer, you have a little bit more time to think about the way you want to say the sentence, and you have a little bit of time for the next line to play in your head, which sometimes is annoying because, you get going on a roll and you can't keep up with the characters.
Yeah, you need them to quiet down a little bit. I understand. You mentioned that you have a new book coming out. Tell us about it.
My newest book is called Between, and I got the idea, it just came in a flash, and I saw this girl watching a boy who was sitting on the floor, watching another boy who was laying on a bed watching TV. And I was like, what is that all about? And then I realized that the boy on the bed couldn't see the other boy, and that boy couldn't see the girl. And so I was kind of exploring this idea, and I realized that, oh, they're dead, they're ghosts. And pretty much then I got this arc of a story in my head, and I went to my brother and I said, I've got this idea and it won't stop playing, but I don't write ghost stories. I don't even read ghost stories. And he thought it sounded awesome. So it stayed in my head for about 2 years, and then I decided to write it. So the main concept is this girl wakes up in the woods. She's in a ball gown or a fancy dress, and she has no memory of who she was or how she got there. And she runs into a pioneer at first, and then she runs into all these kids, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. And essentially they're in a place called Between, where you are in the last day that you were alive. And so she can go to the last day of the other characters, and they can all go to the present day, but their worlds are made up of their memories. And so as they gradually forget things, they'll forget how to smell, they'll forget how to taste. And so they're teaching her to keep her memories alive and to kind of explore living when she is actually no longer living.
And what was the reason for that? Why would they want to teach her those things that really no longer apply for her?
Pretty much because as you forget, your senses fade, and eventually you can actually lose enough energy. You are made up of energy from other people's thoughts about you, and so as other people move on with your life, you either have to try to get them to remember you, or you will fade.
So she's trying to stay basically alive through other people's thoughts. So that, I assume, then comes into the first person that she's watching, that other boy, the middle character. Is that right, or am I missing something?
Yeah, that comes into play. The other boy, the older boy who's watching the younger one, is his older brother, and he is also in between. So he's torn because he doesn't think that the dead should interact with the living, because he doesn't want the living to get so obsessed with death that they forget to live. But he's also concerned about the situation that his brother's in. So, and he is a little bit of an outsider of the group to begin with. And so Chloe is the main character, and she's really just trying to remember who she was and why she was afraid, and find out who sent her to Between.
So I'm curious, is there any penalty for the older brother if he does interfere with his younger brother?
Not really. They can interact with the present world. It does take a lot of energy, but mostly they choose not to, because for one thing, if you get a ghost hunter after you and they start taking pictures of you, it hurts and it will take your energy. So there's kind of a fine balance between getting their attention and not getting too much attention.
So I assume that by using their energy to interact takes away their energy that they have, which then decreases their ability to do other things down the road. Is that right? Okay. So it came to you in a vision or something. Any other ideas as to why that came to you, or what made you want to write it?
Not really. Honestly, most of the time when my stories come, it's almost like a character just plops down next to me and starts telling me story, whether or not I want to hear it. Sometimes I'm like, no, I'm already working on a book, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So you end up having to pull out one of your journals and start writing their ideas, and then say, okay, they'll come back to it later.
Sometimes, yeah. Usually, I just let them stay in my brain, and then whichever one buys out is the one I will tackle next.
Okay. And speaking of next, after this one is coming out, you have another one after that. Is that correct?
Yes, I have a sequel to Between. It's called Among.
Among. Okay. And so how many sequels are you seeing in that original story?
In Between?
No, the first one that you did. You said it was a series?
Sintara has 7 books, and I'm currently writing the last book and kind of a prequel. But they play into each other, so I'm writing them together.
So you have them planned to come out over a period of time, like one a year or something?
I hope once I start getting them, it'll be about 6 months. I'm trying to get most of them pretty ready to go before, because for the first book I published and I didn't know what I was doing. And then people wanted the sequel and it wasn't ready yet. These books are about 500 pages each, so they're sagas. So it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, and those are good sized books.
Yeah, and I mean, I've spent 17 years with that particular story, and that one is the one that has the most parallels to my life and the different stages that I went through. So it's kind of grown up as I have.
So with all the different story ideas that are coming to you, any idea on account wise how many are sitting there waiting for you to attack?
Oh geez, I think I wrote that out once. There's probably with some older manuscripts that I have scrapped and rewritten, I think I had like 20 in there. There will be books. There will be more books than I can write.
So, I trust your family is a good supporter of you and helps you through that.
Oh yeah. They mostly they're just like, why haven't you published the next one yet? And I say, well, I'm still revising it and I have to check these storylines, and they're just like, just publish it. So.
Well, tell them from somebody who knows the marketing of books, slow down. There's no rush. Plan it out. And with that, we're going to step away for our last sponsors break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, Brakefield and Berkey here, award-winning authors for the Techno Thrillers books, the Enigma book series. Technology, today's weapon of choice, the cyber good guys versus cyber bad guys.
We invite you to join our website, theenigmaseries.com, where you will get sample chapters, sample audibles, book trailers, and you can sign up for our mailing list. The books are available in ebook, paperback, and Audible. Thank you.
National Authors Day is November 2nd, 2019 in Houston, Texas. Join us at Discovery Green as we celebrate being a published author and remind the world of the great books that writers constantly create for your enjoyment. You can register at authors.dearindie.org. Tom Gromes, father of market intelligence, writing business books that are a game changer.
international author of nonfiction, has written the first and only books on the collapse of Russia and the first and only book on market intelligence. Check them out at mkintel.org. That's mkintel.org, mkintel.org.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
No, excuse me. And welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois. We appreciate you listening or watching Indie Beacon Radio. And we have with us Lindsey Backen, who has written several books and has at least 20 more ready to go in the near future. One of the first questions I have for you is, what can you say to somebody who wants to be a writer or a published author? Words of encouragement.
The most important thing is to start writing for yourself. Whenever I first started Between, I actually told myself I wasn't going to publish it. And that gave me the freedom to write it and to explore what I wanted to. And then I decided, hey, I will. So I think when you take off the pressure of actual publishing and you write to explore your own ideas and what's inside of you, it will help you get over that initial transformation into becoming a writer. And then you end up with something you go, oh, this is really good. I want to give this to the world. But I think not jumping ahead. I think writing for you is the most important thing.
Okay. Now, as a published author, have you found difficulties in getting people to know you exist?
Oh, yes. Yes. I set up a series of book signings myself. Once I just called a bunch of libraries in the same county and I said, hey, I'm doing a book tour. And I set up my own book tour. And sometimes there would be 27 people. And sometimes there would be a librarian that would go to the aisle and call it in a poor individual who just happened to be browsing the books. And I think you have to, one thing that helped me was going, my books are not for everybody. And that's okay. It doesn't mean it's a bad book, and it doesn't mean it's a bad person or a bad reader. It just means it's not their thing. And whenever I accepted that, it took off a lot of the pressure I think that we feel to get the book out to every person. So I just go on faith that my books are going to find the readers that they're meant for, and the readers that they're meant for are going to really resonate and find hope within them.
Good. And don't feel bad about having just that one person. All the authors that I've worked with all have gone through that at times. Sometimes they have that one, sometimes they have 20, 30, 40, it's part of the game, part of the beast, so don't feel bad about it. How can people learn more about you and about your books?
People can go to my website. It's lindseybacken.com, LindseyBacken. And there they can find all the books. I have a couple of copies that I can sell through the site if they want a message or something in them. But mostly they're also on barnesandnobles.com. Some of them are on Amazon, but some of them are not, I don't think yet. Okay.
And if they wanted to follow you on social media, do you have any social media accounts?
Oh, yes, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm pretty much everywhere. If you just look
all under your name?
Yeah, Lindsey or Lindsey Renee Backen.
Okay. So it's the full name, Lindsey Renee Backen, and not just Lindsey Backen.
It kind of depends. I started shortening it, but a couple of them, when Lindsey Backen wasn't available, is under Lindsey Renee.
Okay.
But also, the website is new. I used to have 2 websites and I consolidated them. So for people that are specifically writers, there's articles on the website for writers as well, just sharing what I've learned and encouraging them.
Cool. And on your website, do you have an events calendar as to where you're going to be and book signings and stuff like that?
Yes, I have an event page that they'll see on the right-hand column. And then there is a calendar, but the calendar is hooked up to the blog post right now. I haven't figured out how to hook it up to the events.
Okay, good. Well, we are at the end of the show. I want to thank you very much for being with us, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.